arc are strikingly obvious. Each constellation of the zodiac moves from its fixed position in the waters above at 1 degree every 72 years. The stars in the circle above us are fixed in their positions, but every 72 years, the entire circle shifts 1 degree. This is what is called the precession of the equinox. Remember, each arc is 30 degrees. If we multiply 72 with 30, we get 2,160 years. It takes 2,160 years for the circle above to shift 1 whole arc. Astronomers call this an age, and this is what is meant by entering or the dawn of a new age. As Wikipedia tells us, the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn were named such because many years ago, in the days before Christ, the days before BC, the sun was in the constellation of Cancer at the June solstice, and the sun was in the constellation of Capricorn at the December solstice. What does it mean for the sun to be in a given constellation during the solstice? It means a position of the sun in the sky at solar noon. Of course, during solar noon, we would not actually be able to see the stars in the firmament beyond. Therefore, to discern the sun's position relative to the constellations requires either 1, a thorough understanding of the stars and their positions above. Our ancient ancestors, we are told, created star charts and used devices such as astrolabes. Or 2, computer technology that is able to map and overlap the sun's position against the backdrop of the stars and constellations at solar noon. The sun's presence in the constellation of a given zodiac sign means exactly as it sounds. At solar noon, on the day of the solstice, the sun should be in front of a given constellation. Look closer at the zodiac wheel featured on the dial of these clocks. Here we see that both the constellations of Cancer and Capricorn are polar opposites to one another. These are the names of the 2 lines of latitude on the maps and that we use to discern the sun's most northerly and southerly excursion above our flat plane. All historical cartographic world maps display both these circles of latitude as Cancer and Capricorn. We see it here on Mercator's maps, on the Ortelius, on the Rouge, on the Urbano Monte. Cartographic maps combine so-called science with aesthetics to communicate spatial information effectively. They strive to be accurate. And we still use this designation of Cancer and Capricorn for these circles of latitude on our cartographic maps today. Google Earth also uses these designations. But why? As Wikipedia states, when this line of latitude was named in the last centuries BC, the sun was in the constellation Cancer at the June solstice, the time each year that the sun reaches its zenith at this latitude. Similarly, when the Tropic of Capricorn was named, the sun was in the constellation of Capricorn at the December solstice. And the wheel of the zodiac makes this very easy to understand. For instance, if the sun is in any given constellation at solar noon on the June solstice, then its counterpart on the December solstice will always be in the constellation opposite to the June sign. And this is represented with a straight vertical line. If, for instance, the sun was in the constellation of Aries at the June solstice, then it will appear in the constellation of Libra in the December solstice. If the sun was in the constellation of Pisces at the June solstice, then it would be in the constellation of Virgo during the December solstice. These signs are, in a sense, bound in their opposition to one another. And this is where it becomes interesting. The vertical line here represents the tropic circles and their respective constellations during the solstices, but they are governed by another circle of latitude, the equator. On the wheel, this is represented by the horizontal line, and you'll see that the lines form a cross. The equator and the tropic circles are bound in unison by this cross. Remember, the zodiac is the clock face of the circle of stars above us. When one turns anti-clockwise, the rest follow. And just like the signs of the solstices, the left hand of the horizontal line here represents the constellation the sun is in during the March equinox, and the right-hand side representative of the sign during the September equinox. And it is the left-hand side of the cross, the March equinox, or what is referred to as the vernal equinox, and its zodiac sign, which acts as a reference point for the entire celestial coordinate system. It's called the first point of Aries. The naming of this reference point after the sign Aries is arbitrary, or so they say. We also use it as a reference point for naming the age we are in. And if we start in the age of Aries, we can illustrate the precession of the equinox and the designation of constellations to their corresponding circles of latitude quite clearly. For instance, if the Sun is in the constellation of Aries during the March equinox, then we have the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. We also see that the Sun will be in the constellation of Libra during the September equinox. Now the stars above us are revolving anti-clockwise from their usual fixed positions at 1 degree every 72 years, and a whole zodiac arc every 2,160 years. So let's jump 2,160 years to the age of Pisces. The Sun is, of course, in Pisces during the March equinox. We have the Tropic of Gemini and Sagittarius, and the Sun in Virgo during the September equinox. You'll no doubt have noticed that the wheel represented here turns clockwise, and that's because it's a representation of the constellations, as if your view was outside of the firmament and looking down on the stars. If you were standing underneath this wheel and looking up, it would rotate anti-clockwise. I am using the clockwise representation because it is the best way to illustrate the precession of the equinox. This rotation keeps shifting one arc every 2,160 years until the wheel makes a full circle, or what is known as a great year. Why is this important? What we see here, and what the mainstream narrative confirms, is that the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn occur during the age of Aries. For the last 2,000 years or so, we have been in the age of Pisces. Remember, an age lasts for roughly 2,160 years. And we are now on the cusp of entering into the age of Aquarius. On June 2020, during the solstice, the Sun entered the border of Taurus, and therefore the transition has already begun. And Google will tell you this yourself if you search. A new age, or a precession of 30 degrees into a new constellation on the March equinox, is not some new age, pseudo-spiritual fantasy of astrologists and yogis alike. It is an astronomical law of the stars above in the firmament, and you can track it yourself every equinox and solstice. It is a critical and integral component in the function of our realm. If we are entering the age of Aquarius, then that means that the Sun has not been in the constellation of Cancer or Capricorn during the solstice for over 2,000 years, when our realm was in the age of Aries. All the old and current cartographic maps, and even Google Earth, represent these circles of latitude as a Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. There are no maps that present the tropic lines correctly as they should be in the age of Pisces, our current age. Wikipedia and other mainstream narratives of deception tell us that our ancient historical ancestors of horse and cart and copper chisels named these circles of latitude in the times of BC, and no one in the course of history that followed bothered to change the names of the tropics to their accurate designation. We are in the age of Pisces, and have been for over 2,000 years. The circles of latitude should be called the Tropic of Gemini and the Tropic of Sagittarius. And so what? What's in a name? But this brilliant lady, who taught me this flat fact, was patient. What's in a name? Everything. And until she said it, I didn't realize how stupid I'd been to overlook this. Maps are not just pretty projections of the landmass on Earth. They are practical instruments of navigation. Our ancient historical ancestors, we are told, depended on celestial navigation, on the position of the stars in the firmament above to guide their way when at sea. Follow the North Star. And if perchance their compasses failed, then knowing the map of the stars above would be critical. Believing that our ancestors just continued to use the designation of Cancer and Capricorn for the tropics that was established by their own historical ancestors, who belong to a different age entirely, is absurd. celestial navigation would have been an essential skill set for anyone navigating their way across the oceans. And if they did have advanced technology, like we have our computers and GPS systems, then would they really be that lazy and neglectful to not bother designating the tropic circles